guitar player extraordinaire, tuning up. We're at House on the Hill studio, doing pre-production. There is the legend, Sir Ron Nevison. Sir Ron.
Now, there is a matter that there's a third verse. So did you, and we do the same sort of thing when we get heavy. Did you want to try to change that riff, or did you want to?
Let's go there.
I got it.
Now, what's before the third verse? Is there a solo or something there? And then if you want to add something, you can do it. I wouldn't add something before we even tried it, kind of yet.
Okay.
So let's. We don't need to go from the top anymore. Let's play now. So that makes the second verse and the third verse
The same.
the same.
Yes.
Right.
Okay.
It
So
keeps the energy up.
So, of course, we're here with our friend Ron Nevison, who's
we're not friends. Let's not get. We're associates.
associates. Now, Ron, of course,
But I like to be your friend. I mean, that would be good.
that'd be great.
But it's too early to say that we're friends right now.
So our associate Ron here.
Because friends usually spend a lot of time together, and we just really haven't spent that much time together.
We don't spend enough time together, Ron.
But
Now, Ron, of course,
we
has
could
friends.
spend more time together if I was here longer.
That's true.
So it could be the second time I get back here, we could be friends.
Right on.
Now,
That goes for everybody else too.
now you should know that it's okay though, because Ron has other friends when he comes to visit the New York area.
How do you know that?
Because you've told us this.
Okay.
And now, just the other night, for
I could have
example,
lied.
well, you were telling us about your friend Kathy. You know that.
That's platonic.
Of course, but we want to show everyone just the kind of friend Ron has. Because I'm not kidding when I said
You
that we
motherfuckers.
actually knew.
You motherfucker.
This is Ron's friend.
How about that? I had been Ozzy's band when I did an Ozzy album, and I can't talk about them right now because we're being photographed. So how about them Dodgers? The Mets.
I know.
Christ.
I know the Red Sox and the 49ers.
That's Earl Cohen.
That's a,
You wouldn't know what to look at him, but he's a highfalutin engineer.
Ever spoken like more of a music man in your life?
you know,
Talking about
I
the
love
Red
those.
Sox and the
I love when
49ers
those
against
guys get
each other.
that's always a good game.
Yeah, I think
Yeah,
that,
speaking
well,
like a
whenever you
music
get
man.
9 players playing against 11.
Mm.
Yeah, exactly.
It's always a solid matchup.
You know, and then when they had that other one.
The question is, how did they manage to play with the basketball?
Well, I think the question is, how do you pitch with shoulder pads?
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah.
That's really the question.
It makes it an interesting game, though.
What do you think? Sounds good. Now, is that
Sounds
pre or
like
pro?
an
Pre or post?
Yeah, that's just flat.
Flat.
It's
Yeah.
pure.
Yeah, what did you do?
BM.
Nothing. Yes. use a little
BM's
bit of-
unplugged, right?
Maybe add a little bit of
Use it
music.
up here?
Yeah.
Let's hear it. Let's go.
All right.
Lay it back.
Here we are in the studio, day 2 of recording our as of yet untitled album. Now, 2 years ago we were going to call it Holidays in Our Basement.
But no one agreed with Scott except for Scott. So only Scott thinks that we were going to call it Holidays in Our Basement.
But the name is really not fitting anymore. You know, those holidays have long since come and gone.
Any other words of wisdom?
Words of wisdom. Thank you for buying our album, not downloading it illegally. You know, when he's not drumming, Jason spends his time sitting on the couch, looking at porn.
I'm definitely looking at porn.
She is really hot.
What's the
That was me.
network?
I'm signing into my dumbass MySpace right now.
Okay, can we keep playing, okay?
Yes.
All right. This is wild.
Here's mix engineer extraordinaire Earl Cohen
Hey, man.
working on the Days Before Tomorrow album. And how's it going?
It's going very good. Trying to get some room ambience going.
Right on.
Having a good time.
All right.
Here's our engineer
So-
Josh.
So these guys knew I was coming bearing gifts. I wanted to bring you a little something. buddy.
Oh,
So thank you for all the help.
My birthday was in June.
Well, we'll call it early Christmas.
Okay, am I supposed to
Oh, Josh,
Yeah.
that was nice
open
of
this
you.
in front of the camera?
Yes.
Oh.
It's a shoe?
Yes,
I love
sure.
Another picture of Kathy St. George.
Ah, nothing to do with wine. Hey, a gold cup. God, I feel like a soccer match. Oh my God, this is like, I should hang this.
A little stash
I
of
should
grease
hang
pencils
this.
for you.
Man, grease pencils. No condoms, I don't see.
No condoms.
Some pencils. Oh man, you're the best. A sharpener?
And a sharpener too.
Gotta have a sharpener.
I just wanted to make sure they were taking good care of
Josh?
you,
They are. You are too, man.
Oh, that was awesome,
Good.
Josh.
I was gay.
Hey, this is Eric. I'm the lead singer of Days Before Tomorrow. We are here at the Barbershop Studios in beautiful Hapakon, New Jersey, during the mixing of our CD. We're very excited about the way the thing is turning out, and we're basically almost done, which is giving me this surreal feeling that I might have finally actually accomplished the end of this project, and actually someone might hear it. So anyway, that's what we're doing here. We're sitting in the lounge, waiting for Earl to finish this mix, so we can go in and make our influential decisions, which I don't know if they're that really influential, but we try to think they are, because we're very serious, very, very serious right now. And that's about it. So I throw you back to Scott, who's getting dizzy and is having trouble walking around in circles.
I haven't heard a band create music like this in many years.
Some of you may be curious, probably none of you, but you're going to learn anyway, of how this group of pirates and bandoliers got together.
Wait, I thought it was a ragtag fugitive fleet.
Yes, it's something like that. How we ended up on this great voyage together known as Days Before Tomorrow, and where maybe the concept album came into play as well. And it started off probably the best way I could say is that this band is like a 6 degrees of Scott Kahn or of Eric Klein or of Jason Buchwald. It's somehow we all know each other one way or another through mutual contacts of all kinds. So I'm going to put together a little bit of a chronological order, and I guess if we start in preschool ages, I used to have play dates with Scott's now wife. So we knew each other when we were 3 or 4 years old, and then went to junior high school and high school together as well. And that's the first connection. When we were 8 years old, Scott and I went to day camp together at Camp Barretton's, Rock On, Camp Barretton's. We were in the same bunk together, which we didn't realize until about a year ago when Scott went through pictures and actually found pictures of the two of us in the same bunk, which is pretty funny. So moving forward, the band was actually formed by Scott and Jason Buchwald, who played some keyboards on this album. He's currently residing in Phoenix, so he's no longer with us. But Jason is a major player in this. First of all, Jason went to college with my brother's wife. Of course, they weren't married at the time, but now they are. So that's my weird connection to Jason. Jason is a medical doctor, and he had patients. One would be Earl Cohen, which is how we met Earl, and another would have been the Gianni family, which is how we met Jason Gianni. So there's all those connections in there. Let's see, where's the next one? Scott met Derek through a friend who had a friend who said,
A former employee of my wife had a new job, and she called my wife and said, hey, you know what, my new boss is this amazing guitar player, and he's playing a show. Why don't you come out and check him out? And because I know your husband plays guitar. And so my wife says to me, Scott, let's Donna wants us to go hear her boss play out in some bar, and that he's a really good guitar player. And I'm thinking to myself, yeah, some former employee thinks her boss is a cool guitar player. But at any rate, we decided, what the hell, we'll go out that night, go have a drink, and meet my wife's friend, and go see her boss. And you know what? I was blown away when I heard this guy Derek playing guitar, and I was just really shocked. And we started talking after the set, and we immediately connected, talking all sorts of geek stuff, all about amps and effects and all that fun stuff. And the next week I had him come down to jam with us, and he never left. It's just been great.
And it's the first band I've ever been in that there are two guitar players who really, really enjoy working together. There's never any butting heads. Their tones were matched together. They put together their rigs together. They work out their parts based on style. It's one of the most pleasant musical experiences I've ever been through. So Derek came on board because of that. And at one time we had a drummer who his job took him into Derek's office once a year. So that was Matt. So when Matt was in the band, there was even a connection there. Zeke, I'm sad to say we have absolutely no connection yet, other than he and I know a lot of the same people through playing in bands in North Jersey for such a long time. But that's that was just a coincidental meeting. The rest of it, that's where it stands. I have to fill out all of the details here in the 6 degrees of Scott Kahn for my life. One day when I was a youngster, I had a band called Phoenix. We were not in Phoenix, we were just the band Phoenix. And we had a post office box, because no one was sending out email lists yet. And we had a post office box for our fan mail, and we put an ad in the back of the East Coast Rocker, which then again became the Aquarium, which now has the East Coast Rocker in it. There you go. So I had this ad, and it said, if you'd like to join the Phoenix fan club, P.O. Box 290, Fair Lawn, New Jersey. And I received this unbelievably hysterical, sarcastic letter from someone named Audra, who wrote, I don't think there are really bands in Fair Lawn. I thought there were only dentists. So, needless to say, I was taken by her wit immediately and wrote back a whole long, detailed, sarcastic response. And lo and behold, we struck up a friendship. And so, fast forward to about 2 years ago, I go onto Craigslist, and there's an ad in the Philadelphia region for a North Jersey band. And the influences sound, oh, fast forward to about 2 years ago, I go onto Craigslist, and there's an ad in the Philadelphia region for a North Jersey band. And the influences sounded really cool to me. I liked the influences, and I'm thinking to myself, wow, I really wish that band was in Philadelphia, because driving from Philadelphia to North Jersey late at night would take a little over 2 hours, but during the times of rehearsal would be, practice would take me 3 hours to get there or something crazy, maybe more. About to delete it, but I click on the link and I notice that one of the band members is a Scott Kahn, and I'm thinking to myself, okay, they're rehearsing in Wayne, which is where I knew that Audra and Scott grew up.
Wait, well, you left out Audra Kahn.
Yeah, well, I want to make the connection. Now, I realize that there can't be many Audra Kahns in the world, and especially they probably wouldn't be with a brother named Scott. So I wrote and asked, does this Scott Kahn character have a sister, Audra? And the answer from Jason, who is the one I was speaking with, Dr. J, said yes, actually. So now my curiosity was piqued. Like, okay, well, Audra's an awesome person, and I respect her and I adore her. So if Scott is anywhere near the person that Audra is, I'm going to want to be in that band. So I said I want to audition. We came down. First audition was a blast. We clicked immediately, and I just said, well, I can come, but you'll have to worry about me being late because of traffic, and I made them change the name of the band. That's it.
Now, the really funny thing is, after we heard from Eric, I immediately called my sister. I was like, who's this guy Eric, who's like supposedly this, lifelong friend of yours that is a great singer, and I never knew about him. And she was like, well, he lived in Philadelphia. She was like, I didn't even think to mention him to you when you were looking for singers, because he's all the way out in Philadelphia. So why would he want to be with a bunch of guys in New Jersey? So, well, Audra, thank you. We're happy now. Okay. So, Eric, tell us about the new record.
Well, first of all, we're in this editing studio right here to gratuitously look like we actually did some work in the studio and make it look like it's a making of the CD. No, okay. What am I telling you about? Mostly, I guess I could say that I've written a story that entwines all of the lyrics of each one of the 12 songs together in a format that tells a story about the earth being in peril and there being torture and hatred and problems with the environment and war and pestilence and all of these horrible things that come right at the end of the world. And there being two movements. One, which is this kind of fascistic ideologue leader that is telling everybody what to do and is squashing your rights and squashing your ability to say anything, do anything, as it were. And then there's this underground movement, which are called the Lighters, and the underground movement is trying to get everybody to be enlightened and think differently and do different things. Add a little science fiction, because there's some aliens involved. Add some suicide. Add some problems with the earth. Add a war. And you have to read the rest of the booklet. I mean, we have a 24-page booklet or so that you need to read in order to find out who these people are and what happens. I don't want to give it away on YouTube. So that's basically it. It's a battle of where's the future going and whether or not we are going to take control of our own future, or if we are going to allow the few to tell us what we should do with it and just idly stand by while they grab our freedoms and our rights and rip them away from us. So, that's where we stand.
The cross between the old and the new. A lot of modern edge to it, but yet a lot of from the bands we grew up with and we love. Extremely progressive, and taking the listener through just a story format that will, if you close your eyes, you're going to really be taken on an adventure. The week started out, I guess everybody had their own preconceived notion of how things were going to sound to a certain extent, and then after that first final mix came out, as I am now, everybody was speechless.
But the band that drew me to him originally was Jefferson Starship. He did a lot of work with them, throughout the, I guess, late 70s, early 80s, on a lot of their, some of their best material. music like Find Your Way Back and Jane, rock music. Just great stuff. And I've been a huge fan of the band, Jefferson Starship, and Ron's work producing them, because they were a band that had a lot of the things that we relate to. Mickey Thomas is a tremendous lead singer with a very high voice, with a soprano type voice, and not every producer is really adept at making a high-pitched male vocal strong, and in your face, and Ron has historically done that. Jefferson Starship, they had big multi-layered, multi-part harmonies over really, really progressive music, and that's something else that really ties in here. And so I sent him a link to check out some early pre-production demos that we did in my studio, and and sure enough, he responded to them. He heard in them the same things, for which I heard him being the right possible producer. And we started talking and led to a working arrangement for producing this album. Now, the interesting thing about working with Ron is that he lives out in Portland, Oregon. We're a New Jersey-based band. So we knew that there was going to be a lot of back and forth travel and relying on technology to help us all work together to produce this album. So Ron flew back and forth, a number of times in the making of this album over the past 6 months in particular. It started out with him flying in for a few days of pre-production work, where after we had the songs pretty much as developed as they were going to be by us, then Ron came in for a couple of days and helped finish fleshing out the arrangements, providing some various ideas on things to change. And after a few days, working at that, we made our way to the first studio on our journey. That was Estate Sound over in Short Hills. The next thing we did was retire to my studio, House on the Hill, over in Wayne, New Jersey. And in my studio, we spent the next couple of months doing a lot of tracking. We tracked all of the guitars in my studio. We tracked all of the background vocals for the album. We even tracked lead vocals on a couple of songs, but we'll get to that in a minute. And we also tracked most of the keyboards in my studio. Now, after we had most of the tracking done in my studio at House on the Hill, we then went back to Estate Sound, and I should point out that Ron wasn't with us during the guitar tracking. He actually flew back. He was with us for the tracking of drums and bass, and he went back to Portland. And he went back out to Oregon, and we continued working in my studio, tracking the guitars. And the way things worked was that we spent a lot of time on the telephone with Ron, but we also used technology like Apple's iChat to do video conferencing with Ron. And every time we would get through a song, or parts of a song, we would post files on an FTP server, and then Ron would download them from the server, listen to them, provide feedback, and we'd go back and adjust things as needed. Remember, one of our songs, You're Not the One, I think we were sent back to the drawing board at least 4 different times on different instrumental sections when Ron was just like, no, that doesn't work, that sucks, whatever it was. So we worked a little like that. And then after we had a majority of the basic tracks down, Ron came back out to New Jersey for a week, where he spent the time back at Estate Sound with our singer Eric, laying down the lead vocals. Keyboards were an interesting journey on this album, because literally about 2 weeks before we hooked up with Ron Nevison to produce the album, our keyboard player relocated across the country. Bad timing. He had a job offer for his day job that he couldn't refuse. And who knew that 2 weeks later we'd be talking with Ron Nevison about producing the album? So, however, Jason was not to be left out of this project, and in fact, on roughly half of the songs, ones that he had been actively involved in writing from the beginning for the most part, and then a couple of new pieces, we actually had Jason recording some of the keyboards in his studio out in Arizona. And then for some of the orchestration of some of the songs, Jason actually flew back in and did some of that recording at House on the Hill. For the other songs, I recorded the majority of keyboard parts, and then we had a couple of other guest artists. Actually, our drummer, Jason Gianni, is a monster musician all around, and he laid down some great piano on Can't Do Anything. And we had our friend Hoop, who's a classically trained pianist, come in and play on the song Confrontation.
So part of the making of the album, which, as far as the songwriting part of it, was very exciting because you had, especially between me and Scott and Jason Gianni, you had three people with very distinct ideas of exactly what they wanted, and most of the time they were in three different directions. So this was one of the first experiences I've had in a very long time where I felt like everybody's opinion was going to be tried at one point or another. We were going to try everything, and that was exciting.
Finished up backing vocals at House on the Hill. We also tracked a couple of lead vocals that we hadn't finished over at Estate Sound. So we did a variety of vocals at House on the Hill, as well as overdubs of percussion. It was a lot of fun watching Jason Gianni, on his hands and knees, with his little shakers and castanets, and he was really enjoying himself. And ultimately that led to finally arriving here at the barbershop to mix the album.
I'm working on a K series today, and it's I'm a happy guy today. I will say that.
Right on.
See? Ooh, that's alright, let's tighten it up a little bit.
It's very exciting as a singer to be able to work with someone like Ron Nevison, so I thought I'd have to bring this part into the description.
Yeah, bro.
Well, Eric was pretty neurotic.
Originally, we thought we would do the album ourselves, or we would look for a producer maybe, but most likely we were going to do it ourselves. When the idea of Ron came in, this is like a singer's wet dream, because he knows, if you listen to stuff that he's produced, the singer always sounds awesome. So I'm just thinking to myself, okay, I have a good chance of sounding pretty good on this record now that this guy's involved. So it was a really big thing for me. And
Eric was pretty neurotic.
the lesson that I learned from this, and it was Ron, and it's Earl mixing, who's, again, his ears are brilliant. He hears things I don't even know exist and then brings them out in the mix, and all of a sudden you didn't even realize they were there and they sounded as good as they could sound. But what it was about working with Ron on tracking especially, and then working with Earl and Ron on the mix and production, what I found is that you can sing exactly what you want to sing as long as you could pull it off, and you pull it off well enough that you shouldn't have to fight with guitar players for space. And I've always been in bands where I felt like the mix, either the vocals were too hot or the guitars were too hot, and I never had this really brilliant balance of the two. And between the work of Scott and Derek on getting their parts to be the right parts and not stepping on each other, and then having Ron producing and creating vocal parts with me and making the right tracks happen, and then having Earl make them pop, it's been an unbelievable experience. It's like I love the way the vocals came out, yet the guitars still sound huge. And that's my lesson to singers out there. You don't need to take a back seat. You just need to work a little bit harder with your musicians to make sure that the parts are right. Because if the parts are right, you'll find your pocket.
He did a great job. He sounds like himself, and I'm very pleased with every single vocal we did. I think that he did a great job. I think Josh and I did a great job in recording and comping and making him sound great, and I'm overall very pleased with the whole deal.
Okay, so here we are hanging out at the Barbershop Studios, and Derek just got an amazing lap dance from Candy. And dude, you're sitting there with a big pillow on your lap. Okay, so really, these interviews are all about the making of the CD. So tell us about tell us about the CD and.
The
Yeah.
CD is simply amazing. Simply amazing.
Eric, tell us about this new album. Tell us about the new album. Tell us about the record.
I don't know what to tell you about the record. And these are going to be outtakes, right?
So Derek, how would you describe the sound of Days Before Tomorrow?
Gosh.
Yeah, and so tell us about when you lost your virginity.
I think I'm going back through that with my current wife, actually.
I think Derek and I bring very different influences to the table in terms of our style of guitar playing. And it's part of why our sounds really complement each other so beautifully. When I hear Derek's playing, players like Dan Huff are like the first kind of players that come to mind, or Steve Lukather. Really, Derek's a Berkeley guy. He's got the studio chops, and and with it comes a really precise attack in the way he plays his guitar and chooses his phrases and his runs. Where I come from on the guitar, I've had so many different influences over the years, but the ones you would probably notice the most in my playing would probably borrow from a variety of players like Alex Lifeson from Rush, The Edge, Trevor Rabin from Yes, Andy Summers from The Police. Sort of this combination of progressive rock players and alternative rock players that really combine. I mean, generally, when you hear our stuff, I'm the guy that goes for more of the effects and spacey sounds, and Derek tends to go for more of the pure tone parts. Although, really, we're both tone freaks, and throughout the record, we paid a lot of attention to the sound of everything. Just because you like a sound with a lot of effects, you still need to start with just a really beautiful tone, from your amp before you do anything to it, or else it just sounds like mush.
Pretty funny listening to Scott talk about our guitar influences. Some of his major influences, mine too, but probably more Scott, is Steve Wilson from Porcupine Tree and Steve Rothery from Marillion. Tremendous influences on Scott. Of my favorite, I used to tend to heavily lean towards jazz rock and fusion and that LA scene. Larry Carlton was a huge influence. Who else? Steve Morse, another guy. Draw blanks when I start thinking about other guitar players, because I just get overwhelmed and don't feel like I really deserve to be on the same playing field. But another one is John Petrucci of Dream Theater, one of our heavyweight favorites. Just a complete monster on the guitar. It's just incredible, very inspirational, and I know he's a keyboard player, but Jordan Rudess, his style, his guitar-esque style that I like so much. He's just all over the place and very, just extremely creative, and has a very strong hold on the language of music and the way he expresses himself and the songs within Dream Theater. So those are some of the greatest influences that we strive to be and favor. Scott's playing in comparison to mine, and I feel we work tremendously well together. Scott, I have a tremendous respect for his style. He brings a lot of color and layer and just a lot of depth in his playing and creativity with guitar effects. I can't even come close to his knowledge when it comes to guitar effects. It's just a monster. and helps me out quite a bit with molding some of my effects and tone and getting a little creative. Where I tend to be more probably old school and vintage, I just go for the straight tone and plug and play. Let's go. So Scott, playing with Scott is just an awesome learning experience as well as an enjoyable time for me. And hopefully we'll have a long career together.
And there really was no shortage of gear, because between Derek and myself, we are gear freaks. We are gear fanatics. We have many amps and many more guitars. The Mesa Boogie tone is very prevalent throughout. I think it's safe to say the majority of electric guitar parts were performed and executed using Mesa Boogie amps, primarily amplifiers in the dual rectifier series, as well as some Mark series tones from a Triaxis 290 rig, very popular rack mount boogie gear. We also use some Fender and some EVH here and there, to just add a little bit of different color to the sound. Our guitars, we play a lot of different guitars. We used guitars from Ernie Ball Music Man, from Ibanez. We used some Fender stuff. Probably a PRS showed up, in one or two spots. For our acoustic guitars, we were really slumming it. We only had access to Taylor and Martin guitars. And you all know how horrible those sound. And yes, I'm totally kidding. They are gorgeous sounding guitars, both. And what's really interesting is, finding the right balance of sound between two guitar players like Derek and myself. We're very careful and deliberate in the tones we pick, that they balance each other pretty nicely. For example, if one of us is using a rectifier tone, the other one might be using a Mark series tone or a Fender tone, so that the sounds are not just all of the same. And I'm sure you've probably heard some bands where you got two guys playing through the same Marshall stacks, and it all just becomes sort of a blurred mixing of the instruments. And we really take great care to make sure that every instrument has its place in the song, whether it's our two guitars or even the balance between the guitars and the keyboards, which play a huge role in our sound, and the acoustic guitars, and then leaving space for the vocals and the harmonies. Really, everything has its place. And if there's one thing I could say to aspiring songwriters and musicians working on honing their craft is, don't feel like you have to be playing all the time in every space on every song. Think about what's the right part for the song. Leave holes. And Derek and I, we're not always playing everything all at the same time. And we're happy to take a back seat when there's a keyboard section. And really, it's always about playing for the song and creating just great music. That's the dog Tomorrow, seen here in the picture. Zeke hasn't been around the studio too much during the mixing, primarily not while we had the video camera. Another person who hasn't been around much, during the mixing while we had the camera was Jason Gianni. So I'm going to, assume for a moment that I am Jason Gianni. I'd just like to tell you what a great drummer I am, because I just hit those drums so beautifully. And, if you have any questions about that, you should listen to our CD, because it's all about the drumming, really. I mean, rock albums need drums, and I play drums.
That's the problem. Your vocal influences are one thing, and your writing influences are another. Sometimes when you're the singer of the band, you get lucky enough that if you're not a writer, or if you're in a band with many writers, that your only job is to be the singer. And then in that case, your influences are a little bit easier to read. But when I'm doing the writing and the singing, or at least co-writing, and singing, I'm wearing both hats, and it changes the way that things come out. So my question to you is, who do I sound like? I don't know, but if you know who I sound like in your mind, does that mean that that's who I'm influenced by? Probably not. So that's the fun part. And when I figure out the real great answer to that question, hopefully that's because enough people have watched this because the band's become more popular. I don't know. There you go. I'm done. Okay, so for good luck on the last day of mixing, because we're mixing, I'm wearing this vintage UUU t-shirt. And the reason that I'm doing this is that since that band, that was my first love, the music that we wrote together, and
They took your virginity.
yeah, my CD making virginity, yes. But that was the first time I was in a band that my co-writers, which mainly was my guitar player Doug, he and I had a chemistry that it went from writing to performing, and it was a lot of fun, and it was something that has influenced a lot of my decisions as I've gone on choosing different bands. And this is the first band since that I feel that same real connect and real pride of accomplishment as a group. And because of it, I thought it would be apropos that the torch has finally been passed. I finally made a recording that I'm equally proud of. Recording sometimes even just of demos I made with my old band back when I was with them. So, in tribute to the passing of the torch, there you go.
You know, if you like what we did here, you know, just wait till the next album. You know, and you haven't heard anything from us yet. We're just getting started.